City builders are some of my favorite games, but the most common issue that I suffer from when playing them is choice paralysis. For a genre of games about making decisions, avoiding choice paralysis is fundamental to the play experience, yet some titles are held back by it, while others can successfully subvert it. Barry Schwartz, an American psychologist, professor, and researcher on choice paralysis, addresses the issue as,
all of this choice has two effects, two negative effects on people. One effect, paradoxically, is that it produces paralysis rather than liberation. With so many options to choose from, people find it very difficult to choose at all.
choice paralysis occurs in games when a player fears that they may not be content with the choices they make, leading to dissatisfaction once they see the consequences of them. The games that I will be looking at are SimCity 4, Cities Skylines, Cliff Empire, and Workers and Resources Soviet Republic. And the questions I will answer are, what are some of the common characteristics that cause decision paralysis in these games? What have some games done to avoid decision paralysis? And how effective are their solutions? The biggest issue with SimCity 4 is that it provides the player with immediate access to many systems that are not relevant early on in the game. This can lead to players utilizing said systems incorrectly or weighing options that simply aren't necessary. City plots in SimCity 4 have three sizes: small, medium, and large. This can alleviate some of the planning and decision-making required for larger simulations. There is some progression in the unlocking of specific buildings, but not the systems that utilize them. Small plot sizes limit the potential for city growth and are harder to play in, but do provide a way for the player to reduce the magnitude of the simulation and decrease the amount of decision-making required. Decision paralysis in Cities Skylines comes from the free-to-play trap, where players looking for a casual experience often load an easy game with economic simulation turned off and everything unlocked, and realize that the satisfaction of having a big city is not worth the amount of effort required to get there. The normal gameplay of Cities Skylines guides the player through the systems and needs of the city, and provides milestone thresholds that limit the tools that are available to the player until they are necessary. The most basic form of Cities Skylines is good at teaching the player what they need to know and gradually introducing more advanced mechanics, but some players do not find this game mode very interesting and would rather just build the city they want, which can lead to discouragement and decision paralysis. Cliff Empire is a game that takes a different approach to city building by dramatically limiting the game's space. Because of how limited the game space is, the player can suffer from decision paralysis in a different way, by not knowing what to optimize rather than not knowing what to use in the first place. It is easy enough to get started, but harder to decide what compromises to make once the map quickly runs out of space. The limited space of the cliffs, combined with a standardized set of necessary game elements, makes each cliff similar in function, but allows the player to specialize them individually and still utilize all of the provided systems. The standardization of necessary buildings makes it easy to learn the basic functionality of the cliffs, and allows the player to complicate their system at their own discretion. The small game space helps streamline setting up a city early on. Workers and Resources is a game that showcases the incredibly productive and boring side of communism, with in-depth supply chain networks, material transport, labor management, citizen needs, and more. The signature element of this game is that every building and system is made immediately available to the player as soon as they start. The systems in this game are so diverse and so immensely detailed that it's hard to tell it apart from a full simulation. Because the player is playing as the communist state, they must make all of the decisions for their people and hope that they're doing it right. This can turn players off once they realize they've made mistakes that they did not know how to avoid. Other than a brisk tutorial and an encyclopedia, Workers and Resources does absolutely nothing to prevent decision paralysis among its players. One benefit to the immense complexity is that the player can take direct action against any problem that their state is facing, so long as they know how to fix it. After looking at these games, we can see how they've answered my thesis questions. What are some of the most common characteristics that can cause decision paralysis? Games that give players access to too many elements or systems without appropriate guidance are likely to cause decision paralysis and frustrate the player when they inevitably misuse or misunderstand them. Discrete moments in game time, city builders that can be paused, allow players to think more carefully about their decisions, but also allow them to overanalyze a situation. What have some games done to avoid decision paralysis? Games can reduce the game space in order to limit the possible decisions, or limit the number of individual elements to choose from in early stages of the game. Games can provide a meaningful sense of progression to the gameplay by gradually exposing the player to new systems once they are relevant. How effective are their solutions? Limiting the game's space may reduce the number of decisions in the short term, but leads to a different kind of decision paralysis later on, and too few unique elements can make gameplay unsatisfying. Guiding a player through a system directly does provide a stronger understanding, but can sometimes be intrusive or out of touch with what the player is actually experiencing.